Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. So over the last couple of years, we have been fully focused on the future financial system. We know things are changing in a huge way. We know the financial system as we know it is undergoing one of the most significant changes in history. And a lot of that has to do with companies and projects like Hedera, Ripple, Stellar as well. And it's only going to get more and more obvious as time goes on, because even now we have crypto on center stage within the US. We now have governments talking about crypto, how to adopt crypto, how to plan around the adoption of crypto. And it's only going to become a much bigger talking subject. But one of the biggest things that I've been fully focused on is how finance as a whole is changing, which it's already happening. You have names like BlackRock tokenizing, Franklin Templeton tokenizing as well. And it's only going to grow more and more. But before we really focus on that, I do want to focus on a few other things happening around Hedera that's going to allow the ecosystem to grow in the short term, which is going to be beneficial for HBAR holders in the short term as well as the long term. So let's actually start off with the Thrive Protocol announcement, because everyone knows about this recent announcement. Now, this goes back to, I think, the beginning of March. So Thrive Protocol announced that they were doing a 4 million HBAR builder fund, and that is still accepting applications. We have with up to 180,000 HBAR per project. Now's the time to bring your innovation to Hedera. Know a project that should apply, earn up to 20K Thrive points for successful referrals. Now, I do think that this is going to be very beneficial because it's focused on DeFi, GameFi, AI integration, RWAs, and also even meme coin infrastructure. All of this is going to be, beneficial for Hedera and the entire ecosystem. And I think that as we really kind of look into what's happening around Hedera right now, there's a lot of accelerator programs similar to this. A lot of the funds previously were, dead ends. But the difference here is that it actually has to go through a full breakdown of, full launch, then actually establish projects, and then further evaluations have to go on where we are actually seeing benefits from the project in order to have the actual fund released to those that actually created the project. Instead of it just being an upfront, all right, here's the HBAR, go ahead and build. No, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be over time, which I do think that that's a great way to actually have these funds structured going forward. I think every single fund should be similar to that. But I think that this is going to be very beneficial for Hedera. And on top of that, talking more so about AI, we know that the Hashgraph Online DAO recently announced talking about AI agents, AI, which is Convergence AI, basically. It's a decentralized AI standard by Hashgraph Online. And this is actually going to be pretty cool. I think that this is going to be great for Hedera as well, because what we are going to see is AI agents launching on Hedera. It's been very beneficial for a lot of great ecosystems out there. And I think that's going to be great for Hedera as well. And I'm actually very excited about this. Here's what it really will look like. You have AI Agent A and B with the profiles here, the topics, the registry topic, and then, of course, the connection topic, all leading back to the Hedera consensus service. So love to see it. I think that this is great, and it's just another big win from the Hedera team, because every single narrative out there that's very strong, that everyone has been looking into pumping their bags, like, for an example, AI or RWA tokenization or DeFi or gaming, this, that, whatever, all of that's actually covered under Hedera. If you really want to have access to every single strong narrative for this cycle, Hedera is your best bet, in my opinion, because it is targeting everything. This is basically an, all-in-one umbrella to access every single big narrative around crypto. But also on top of that, we did get a big update from Binomial, which is new product alert. DOT and HBAR features now available to trade on Binomial exchange. CFTC regulated, physically settled as well. This is great. This is all around futures, and I do think that this is kind of in line with the ETFs. XRP actually just got approved on Binomial as well around this. It's all CFTC regulated. I think that this is kind of paving a way for these to actually have ETF trading live, or ETFs trading live, which we know that we've been waiting for the HBAR ETF for a while. I think it's going to be a big game changer. All of this kind of all of these kind of moves around these other additional markets, like HBAR futures on Binomial, for an example. Just using this one, as a prime, move. What this really means is the market's expanding for these assets, which means HBAR or XRP or DOT in this case, all of these projects now have an additional market tied to them, which means more trading volume, more buyers, more sellers. Doesn't really matter about the selling side because, again, all this is trading volume, which is very good. More access is very beneficial. So I think that this is a game changer, and I think that this is great as well. But also moving into the topic of discussion, which is the future financial system. Recently, and I did share a clip from this, HiveMind Cap put out a great podcast with Charles Atkins, the CEO of HBAR Foundation. And in this, there was a discussion on the long-term vision of Hedera. Now, this is Hedera as a public utility. Now, check this out. It's about 3 minutes long, and it's actually very interesting to see where Charles's head is when it comes to Hedera.
For sure, where if Hedera manages to achieve this vision, what does it look like in 10 years, and what's the biggest challenge standing in your way?
Yeah, I mean, I think what it looks like in 10 years is we don't really speak about Hedera as a standalone company. It's a utility that's built into almost every layer of the internet and technology that needs trust built into it. And like we kind of talked about the idea of streaming finance and streaming earnings and payments,
right?
That becomes a real thing. The waiting 2 weeks for your paycheck, probably not a thing in 10 years. It's as you work, your pay comes in, and it's almost like a fuel gauge. It'll move up and down, and how things are going. That changes credit markets. I would say any area of technology, ubiquitous computing is obviously something that's likely going to take over the bulk of our lives in the next 10 years. I mean, everything from healthcare to AR, VR, IoT devices. The baseline of it all is there safety, is there trust, and what is the proof of human behind who's actually operating these?
Yep.
It's something that Hedera can actually just inbuild into current systems or things being built, and it doesn't have to stand alone as a technology. So, as technology rapidly improves, I encourage everybody to build in systems like Hedera just into their actual hardware, into their software, as just a needed feature to what everyone else is building. That is, one of the reasons I always position Hedera as a commodity. It's, everybody can have access to it, and I make the really rudimentary comparison to coffee beans. It's like coffee beans are not that exciting on their own. They're bought, sold, and traded. But when a coffee bean is purchased and it moves into a Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donuts or, another somebody who actually does something with it, creates a business around it, well, then that commodity becomes really exciting. And so that's why, when we talk about financial institutions or payment rails or governments or even individual, startup founders like Galaxy out there who are building a whole new, social network where it's impossible to be deplatformed. You basically own all of your data, all of your content, and you can move it wherever you want. Those kind of things require trust and safety underneath them, and trust and safety that moves at the same speed of what we would expect, technology to move at.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
And this is exactly why I've always stated that Hedera has a very unique overall opportunity in this space and even outside of this space, because everything we know around the traditional world is that finance is broken. The payment rails are broken. We need to make these things efficient. The best way to do that is by having something like Hedera be the rails for almost all of these huge moves being made. Even, I love the fact that he did mention Galaxy, because Galaxy is a very unique project in the space. It's a completely, different app that we've never seen before. It's basically a Web 2 based application where it just looks like a social media platform, but it has everything that Web 3 encompasses included in it, which is huge. but it's only, it's only made possible through networks like Hedera that are extremely efficient to send and receive payments or do anything around transacting. And this is why we look at the future of finance and we look at the connections that Hedera has, and then we can immediately, jump to the conclusion that Hedera is going to be part of this big revolution. Like for an example, like DeFi, right? We know Bonzo Finance is an absolute giant. Recently, they put out a post, and it was the long-term roadmap for the Bonzo Finance protocol aligns with its vision of becoming the liquidity layer of Hedera. This started with lending and borrowing, and that will continue with new features, improved usability, and asset support, but we envision the addition of more advanced DeFi functionality. The next suite of tools is focused on yield optimization, automation, and management of user liquidity across Hedera's DeFi protocols, SushiSwap Labs, Bonzo Finance, CDPs, and new DEXs, etc., making Bonzo Finance an entry point for DeFi users. This has not yet been announced, and there will be more details provided in the coming months. In addition, the incorporation of bridging with support for wrapped majors with like wrapped Ethereum, Bitcoin, etc. This is unlocked once Layer 0 Core and Axler come online. We're working closely with bridge providers plus ecosystem partners to make this possible. There are many moving parts. The vision of Bonzo Finance is becoming a foundational layer of liquidity and utility across Hedera DeFi 2.0. So again, when we think about DeFi, DeFi is that piece of this space that will eventually be converging with, TradFi in a huge way, unlocking trillions on top of trillions of dollars of opportunities out in the world. I mean, when you bring on an asset class like, for an example, real estate into the DeFi space, which will be eventually happening, where you are going to actually be able to, borrow against tokenized real estate or do anything with, a value that's tokenized. You could tokenize something that has, say for so, a value of $100,000, okay? Borrowing against that is huge. Earning yield on that is huge as well. It's all based around the lending and borrowing side of DeFi. And that's why Bonzo is a game changer, but it's also why DeFi itself in this space is a huge focus point from the institutional side. When we think about institutional DeFi, that's becoming a big talking point because of what is capable with this tech through the institutional side of things. That's why these big players are bringing on trillions of dollars, or at this point, billions that will lead to trillions of dollars on chain. But also, SushiSwap also released an update, and that said, as part of our strategic goals, we're tracking progress towards becoming the largest non-Ethereum DEX by volume, liquidity, and active users. Milestone tracking begins Q2 of 2025, targeting leadership by Q2 of 2026. Follow along as we build the future of DeFi on Hedera. Again, DeFi is such a big piece of the move towards bringing the financial system as we know it on chain. Chainlink is a big driver of this as well. And even going back to December of 2024, remember that Chainlink data feeds and proof of reserves are now available on Hedera. And this is all based around building secure DeFi apps and scalable tokenized RWAs. Then, back in February, Chainlink also announced that Bonzo Finance has integrated the Chainlink standard for verifiable data, starting with price feeds for HBAR and USDC. Again, these are big moves because of how big Chainlink is becoming. And even Chainlink themselves, right? They were on stage at Digital Asset Summit 2025, where they talked about the big transition. The internet-based financial system, which we don't really even have an internet-based financial system. It's just more so we have traditional finance on like, it's not exactly what we think of it, right? Like we don't actually have digital rails set up. Everything's still moving over those antiquated rails. We just have digital user interfaces basically. So I wouldn't really consider it the internet-based financial system, but again, it is what it is. But that was a transition from paper, and now there's a transition from the internet-based financial system to the Web3 financial system. And that understanding definitely did not exist there 4 or 5 months ago. Check this out.
Sergey, you were speaking to the President of the United States 2 weeks ago. It's a very surreal moment, I have to say. But how would you say this recent regulatory shift, this positivity, is? What potential does it have to impact DeFi specifically?
Yeah, so it's basically the key unlock that I think our industry was waiting for. I think Bitcoin transactions and kind of the early versions of DeFi were for one group of users, kind of the DeFi degen community, which we all love and are a part of, and is great and is going to continue and is going to grow massively. But I think there's now another community forming, which is the institutional DeFi community. And that institutional DeFi community is going to eat up more and more of the global financial system. And I think the people in Washington, D.C. understand this. They understand that the internet-based financial system was a transition from paper, and now there's a transition from the internet-based financial system to the Web3 financial system. And that understanding definitely did not exist there 4 or 5 months ago, because they were still thinking about how do we just stop in everything, how do we slow everything, how do we kill everything, how do we not allow anything to be transacted or any teams to be in the US or any of this stuff. So it's a massive, massive shift. And I think they're sometimes thinking about how do I encourage teams to come back to the US. But I think what will actually be the more important outcome due to the global nature of our industry is how do all the assets get issued in the United States? And then how do those assets go into the most reliable DeFi protocol like Aave to be lended against and all those type of things? And it's not necessarily critical that the team that runs Aave or the DAO or the contributors are all in the US. What's more important is that the DeFi system, the DeFi ecosystem can function in the US financial system.
So, when we think about what he's talking about here, it's the same thing that I've been saying throughout this video, right? How do we have that bridge set up? It's TradFi converging with DeFi. When you have the largest US-based institutional players bringing on trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars on chain through these US-based platforms, that's how, number one, the US becomes a dominant force around digital assets. But it's also how we get to that mass institutional grade adoption, which will lead to the mass adoption of retail. But when we think about that, right, these tokenized assets are not just going to sit on chain. They are going to be traded. They're going to be borrowed against. They're going to be lent as well. And if we think about that, what better network of choice than something like Hedera that can infinitely scale? We know how efficient it is around transactional use cases. Like, this is why we look at the big pieces here, like Bonzo or SaucerSwap or any DeFi platform that's issued out or even launched on these networks like Hedera. When we think about what's going on here, the revolution around the financial system as we know it is already ongoing. It already has, I would say it started initially back in 2020 when the DeFi summer really hit big. From that point on, DeFi just continued to grow. Today, we have about $100 billion tied to DeFi. And if we think about that, most of that is retail. When you have institutions being a main driver around the DeFi space, that 100 billion all of a sudden seems very small when you bring on the first trillion or the first 10 trillion. And from that point on, it's a very quick snowball. This is why I keep saying that you want to focus on the institutional side. You want to focus on the things outside of the scope of retail, because although, yes, retail can bring in a lot of value, there's a lot of hype driven by retail. The main value driver is going to be what the institutional players do, what the enterprise players do. That's why I love the overall future outlook from Charles when it comes to where he sees Hedera, in the next 5, 10 plus years. When we think about some of these networks in this space, they are going to power a large portion of finance. They're going to power a large portion of everything that we know of today. And eventually, at one point in time, DLT blockchain will power finance as a whole. Everything that we know of that needs a rail will be moving over DLT and blockchain. That is something that I don't even think anyone will argue against me on, especially at this point where we are starting to see the big shift away from traditional to more digital. DLT and blockchain is that accelerator. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, Nick, thanks for watching. Peace out.